Recently, I went with my friend to pick up their cousin who was... Woo! Sorry, snow day just got announced. But, recently, I went with, my boyfriend and his cousin to pick up their cousin who was recently released from prison. And in the car, on the way home, we're all discussing our own individual reasons for why we don't like police. Because obviously, your first day out of prison, you're gonna have a bit of a sour taste in your mouth. So the topic obviously got brought up. And it inspired me to make a video explaining why I do not like cops. Because this is something that comes up a lot. So if I just had a simple format directly stating my points in order, to just explain and to reference when I need to, instead of constantly having to re-explain myself, that would be awesome. You may notice that the video is titled Why I'm ACAB, not Why I am Anti-Cop. What ACAB means, because a lot of people misinterpret it. ACAB does not, and some people do use it this way also, but it does not generally mean all cops are bad. There are some cops who are good individuals outside of their job. ACAB stands for All Cops Are Bastards, which in this context, I know it sounds like an insult, and it kind of is, but in this context, it means bastards as in bastardized, meaning they are working for a corrupt system, which they are, and that's the part that I think throws a lot of people off, is why is the system corrupt? Because they just don't see the full extent of what cops are and do. So when you say that cops are inherently corrupt, they have a very intense immediate reaction. There is a lot of different reasons why the system is corrupt, and the first one is just what happens to criminals who end up in prison or jail. The 13th Amendment has a loophole in it. And you've probably heard this discussed. It's very commonly discussed in law circles, but the loophole states that incarcerated criminals may be used for slave labor. Incarcerated criminals are an exception to the no slavery rule. A lot of things are making sense now, aren't they? But this means that once someone is incarcerated, they are no longer a human, they are a number, and a number to be profited off of, because they will be used for labor. I mean, who do you think fights California's wildfires? But there is a reason that when you have a job interview or when you are filling out an application, it asks if you have been convicted of a felony. It does affect your ability to work once you get out. It has a huge impact on your quality of life once you get out. And there are exceptions to this. Some places, depending on what you were incarcerated for and when you were incarcerated, it's not that bad. And I say not that bad. It's not as bad as most places. For example, felons in the District of Columbia, Maine, and Vermont never lose their right to vote, including while they are incarcerated. So you still have the right to vote while you are incarcerated. It's probably a lot harder, but you still have that right. You do not lose that right. Whereas in every other state, you lose the right to vote once you are incarcerated, either for the duration of your incarceration, if there's a probation after, then for your probation, for a set number of years after being incarcerated, or permanently, depending on where you are. I know people don't value history too much, but the history of policing in America is extremely important, because it is absolutely essential to acknowledge that police started out as paid slave patrol. Originally, they had volunteer law enforcers, and it worked great, but they eventually established a slave patrol force, which was then turned into a police force when slavery was abolished. But with the way that black communities are over-policed and are systematically fucked, which I could do a whole nother video on. I don't know if I have time or energy or space to do it here. Actually, between Ronald fucking Reagan doing Ronald Reagan, which, let me know if you want a future video essay about why Ronald Reagan is the devil.
Ronald Reagan was the devil.
Ronald Reagan was the devil! That's probably gonna be the thumbnail for that video, actually. And it's gonna go so hard. But between Ronald Reagan being Ronald fucking Reagan, and also the cycle of poverty, it keeps black people down, because when slavery was abolished, the freed slaves had absolutely nothing, not a penny to their name, nothing but the clothes on their backs that they were freed with, and maybe a few things that they managed to keep. But slaves, generally speaking, unless they were house slaves, didn't really have much. So when they were freed, obviously, they were very poor. No one wanted to hire them, no one wanted to pay them much, there wasn't a federal minimum wage. So they also, due to segregation, they had to stay in their own neighborhoods with their own shops and everything. Basically, due to the cycle of poverty, that segregation never fully ended. And because of the way property taxes work, lower income areas generally have lower funded schools. Lower funded schools means oftentimes lower quality education and lower graduation rate and lower chances of getting into higher secondary education. Not to mention the countless other struggles of being black in America that I, as a white woman, have no grounds to speak on definitively. It just makes it harder to go anywhere. Like, you don't have the means to move up a lot of the time. If you do move up, it's often from luck. And that sounds terrible. Oftentimes, people in poverty, especially generational poverty or local poverty, don't have the means to move up. But because of that, they often stay in the same neighborhoods for generations. That is how the poverty cycle never fully abolished segregation, And because black people tend to stay in the same underfunded areas for generations, it is often the same neighborhoods that are overpoliced. And again, Ronald fucking Reagan, which I don't think I really need to say much more. It often leads to over-incarceration of black people. And effectively, it means that slavery in America was never fully abolished. There is a definitive loophole to it, and police aid in keeping that loophole alive and well so that slavery can stay alive and well. Because again, who else would fight California's wildfires? Another problem that I have with cops is their inherent advantage over everyone around them. They have some idea about how the law works, and they know enough about loopholes to save their own ass should they need to, so they don't get convicted as frequently. Not to mention, cops, you tend to befriend coworkers, which I've never understood, but most jobs, you end up befriending your coworkers. And cops basically function as a gang. They will protect each other at all costs. So, oftentimes, officers are not often properly persecuted for any crimes they may commit, which you can imagine is dangerous. What's even more dangerous is that they often have a gun and a lot of other weapons. Cops are terrifying. They can make anyone do anything. They have too much power, and too frequently does that power get abused. If you look up 40% of cops, the first thing that comes up is domestic violence rates. You can look up cops' crime statistics on your own if you would like to. I don't really feel much need to expound upon it in this video. It doesn't take too much thinking to realize that police have an inherent unfair advantage over everyone around them. My final arguments are that police function as a gang and exist as a modern form of slave patrol, and it's just not what we need today for law enforcement. We do need law enforcement to some degree, but this is not the method that we need anymore. How do we replace them? What would function better for America? I don't fucking know. I am 16, and there have been a lot of theories about this, and there's a lot of systems in other countries that work better, but there is no definitive answer for what would best replace police in America for the betterment of the people, and I don't think we are going to get one anytime soon. Thank you for listening. I hope that I was able to give someone a new perspective, new line of thinking, and a few new talking points on why cops are bastards. Have an awesome day, and I'm not telling you to go out and punch a cop, but, like, if I watch you do it, I'm not, like, gonna take the cop's side. But I hope you have a good day or night whenever you're watching this. Bye-bye.